Bram woke up before the sun, as he always did. He was an old man with white hair like soft wool and hands rough from many years of work. He lived alone in a small wooden house at the edge of a quiet farming village. His days were simple: tend the garden, feed the hens, fix what was broken. It was not an exciting life, but it was enough for Bram. That morning, he stepped out into the chill dawn air. The sky was pale blue, and thin mist touched the fields like a blanket. Bram rubbed his hands together to warm them. He wore his old coat with patches on the elbows and carried a basket for fresh vegetables. His breath rose like smoke as he walked toward his garden. His garden was his pride. He had rows of green cabbages, tall carrots hidden under dark soil, and tomatoes that turned red and sweet in the sun. Bram bent down to check the leaves for insects. He hummed an old song his wife used to sing. It made him smile, though she was long gone now. Buried under the big oak tree at the back of the house, he moved to the cabbage rows and froze. Something small and curled up between the rows. Bram's heart skipped. He thought it might be a sick dog, or maybe a lost child from the village. He stepped closer, careful not to startle it. When he saw her clearly, he stopped breathing for a moment. It was a girl, or at least she looked like a girl. But her skin was silver, smooth like polished stone, and her hair was white as snow. She was so thin he could see the shape of her bones. She wore something like a torn cloak, but it was full of holes and dirt. Her eyes were closed and her lips moved a little, as if she was whispering in her sleep. Bram slowly knelt beside her. He touched her forehead. She was cold, too. Cold for a living thing. Her skin was soft, but under it he felt a strange warmth, like a tiny fire that was almost out. "Poor thing," Bram whispered. He looked around the empty field. There were no tracks except his own, no sign of a ship or machine. Just the strange girl alone in his cabbages. She stirred when he brushed her hair from her face. Her eyelids fluttered open. Bram drew back in surprise when her eyes met his. They were not like human eyes. They glowed softly, blue and silver swirling together like stars trapped in glass. She tried to speak, but only a faint sound came out. A dry, broken gasp. Bram did not understand her, but he saw fear in her eyes. She was frightened and weak. "It's all right, child," Bram said in his softest voice. He took off his old coat and wrapped it around her small shoulders. She was so light when he lifted her, lighter than any child should be. Bram's knees cracked as he stood, holding her close to his chest. He could feel her shiver, even through the coat. "Don't worry now," he said. "We'll get you warm. You'll be all right." Bram carried her through the garden, past the hen house where the birds clucked at him, curious about the bundle in his arms. He pushed open his front door with his shoulder and stepped into the warm kitchen. The air smelled of old wood and herbs that hung drying over the stove. He laid her on the couch, then hurried to light the small fireplace. Sparks caught on the dry wood, and soon a gentle flame grew, filling the room with a soft orange glow. Bram pulled a blanket from the cupboard and tucked it around her. He set a kettle on the stove for hot water. The girl's eyes opened again. She watched Bram as he moved about. Her lips trembled, but no words came out. She looked so tired, too. Tired to be afraid. Bram sat on the chair next to her. He took her hand in his. Her fingers were long and thin, ending in tiny silver nails. They felt so cold against his warm, calloused palm. "You don't have to speak," Bram said kindly. "Just rest." "I'm Bram. This is my home. You are safe here." The girl blinked, slowly, as if trying to understand. Her eyes drifted to the flames. Bram thought he saw a tiny smile on her face, but maybe he imagined it. He felt her small hand squeeze his finger once before going limp again. The kettle whistled. Bram poured warm water into a cup and dipped a clean cloth in it. He gently wiped the dirt from her face. Under the grime, her skin shone like moonlight. He wondered where she had come from. Maybe from the stars, some lost traveler, far from home. But those questions could wait. Right now she needed warmth and food. He brought broth in a small spoon. To her lips, she swallowed weakly, eyes half closed. Bram spoke to her all the while, telling her about his wife, about the garden, about the hens that liked to steal seeds from his pockets. He did not know if she understood, but his voice seemed to calm her. Outside, the sun rose, turning the mist gold. The village would wake soon. Bram knew some of his neighbors might ask questions if they saw her. People were afraid of things they did not know. But Bram did not care. He had seen too much life and loss to leave a helpless child alone in his garden. When the girl finally drifted into sleep, Bram sat back in his chair and watched the fire. His eyes were tired but soft. For the first time in many years, he did not feel so alone. There was someone here now, someone who needed him. Outside the window, the garden waited for him to return. But Bram stayed by the couch, guarding the strange girl who had fallen from the stars into his cabbages. He did not know what tomorrow would bring. All he knew was that he would not let her fade away, not while he still had strength in his old hands and warmth left in his quiet home. The old man's small house smelled of warm soup and burning wood. Morning light filled the kitchen as Bram moved quietly, careful not to wake the sleeping girl on his couch. He watched her chest rise and fall, slow and uneven. He touched her forehead. It was still cold, but not as cold as before. That gave him hope. Bram filled a bowl with thin vegetable soup. He dipped a piece of bread into it, letting it soak up the warmth. He carried the bowl to the couch and sat down on the small stool beside her. The girl's eyes opened slowly. She looked at Bram, blinking in the soft morning light. Her silver eyes were dull now, like the glow inside her was flickering out. "Good morning, little one," Bram said in his gentle voice. "You must eat something. Just a little. It will help." He dipped the spoon into the soup and held it to her lips. She did not move at first. Bram waited, patient as always. Then her lips parted, and she let him feed her one slow spoonful. She coughed a little but swallowed. Her eyes closed as if even this small effort was tiring. Bram smiled. "That's my brave girl. A little more?" Bit by bit, he fed her the soup. She ate like a bird, tiny mouthfuls, but every drop seemed to bring back a hint of life in her strange eyes. When she was done, Bram tucked the blanket tighter around her. He spoke to her as he cleaned the bowl. "You don't have to speak, not yet, but you should know this is a safe place. No one will hurt you here." The girl watched him, her eyes following his slow steps around the kitchen. She looked at the old photographs on the wall, pictures of Bram's wife and their small wedding, of a young Bram standing proudly by his first harvest. The girl pointed weakly at one photo, her thin finger shaking. Bram turned. "Ah, that's my Laura," he said with a soft laugh. "She was the best part of me. She loved this old house. She would have liked you too." The girl lowered her hand and rested her head back on the pillow. Her eyelids fluttered shut, but Bram could see. She was still awake, just too tired to keep her eyes open. Bram sat by the fire thinking. He knew he could not hide her forever. His neighbors often came by with baskets of eggs or tools to fix. They might ask about the strange glow in his window at night. Some people in the village were kind. Others were afraid of anything different. He looked at the girl. She was so small, so helpless. He could not let fear chase her away. He had lost too much already. He would not lose her too. Later that day, Bram's old friend Joss came knocking at the door. Bram gently covered the girl with another blanket and whispered, "Stay quiet, little star. I'll be right back." He opened the door to find Joss standing there with a basket of apples. Joss was younger than Bram, but not by much. He had a big round belly and kind eyes that always seemed to look for trouble. "Morning, Bram." Joss said, handing him the basket. "Thought you might want these. Good harvest this year." "Thank you, Joss," Bram said, forcing a smile. He stepped outside, pulling the door nearly shut behind him. Joss peered over Bram's shoulder. "Something burning in there? Smells good." "Just soup," Bram said quickly. Joss tilted his head. "You all right? You look tired." Bram nodded. "Didn't sleep much. Too much on my mind." Joss looked curious. "Nothing wrong, is there?" Bram shook his head. "No trouble, just the old bones acting up." Joss leaned closer, lowering his voice. "You hear about that thing last night? Some of the boys swear they saw lights in the sky. Strange ones. Said it looked like something crashed out past your field." Bram's heart thumped. He kept his face calm. "Did they now?" "Probably kids. Playing tricks. Maybe." Joss looked at him hard. "You didn't see anything, did you?" Bram met his eyes and lied as gently as he could. "Nothing but the moon in my garden." Joss studied him a moment longer, then chuckled. "Well, if you see anything shiny running around, catch it for me. Might be worth a fortune." Bram laughed too, though his laugh was dry. "If I find any treasures, you'll be the first to." "No." When Joss finally left, Bram watched him walk down the dusty road until he was just a small shape under the big blue sky. Bram went back inside, closing the door tight behind him. The girl was awake again, eyes wide and shining softly. Bram wondered if she understood any of what had been said. He sat beside her and placed the basket of apples on the floor. "You heard that, didn't you?" he asked quietly. She nodded just once, but it was enough. "You're not from here." "Are you?" Bram asked, though he already knew the answer. She looked at him, then pointed weakly upward toward the sky. Bram's chest tightened. He wanted to ask so many questions. Where did you come from? Who are you running from? But he saw how tired she was, so he just nodded. "I see. Well, whoever you are, wherever you're from, you're safe here." She reached out a trembling hand. Bram took it gently in both of his own. Her fingers glowed faintly now, a soft light that pulsed like a heartbeat. "You need to rest," Bram said. "Rest and get strong. I'll take care of the rest." He stayed by her side until she drifted into sleep again. He watched the tiny glow under her skin flicker like a candle in the wind. It frightened him how close she seemed to slipping away. He knew the food would not be enough. She needed something more, something to feed that strange light inside her. Bram sighed and stroked her hair, so soft and pale. "Hold on, little star," he whispered. "You hold on, and I'll find a way." Outside, the sun dipped low behind the fields. Night crept in, bringing shadows and secrets. But inside the small wooden house, an old man and a fading alien girl kept a tiny warmth alive, a warmth that would not die so easily. Not while Bram still had breath in his lungs and hope in his heart. The next morning came with a soft rain that tapped gently on Bram's old tin roof. He moved about the kitchen in his thick socks, careful not to make too much noise. The girl, still wrapped in blankets, lay sleeping on the couch. Her breathing was slow but steady now, and Bram felt a quiet relief deep in his chest. He poured himself a cup of tea and sat on his stool beside her. He watched her face as he sipped the warm drink. He noticed how her skin seemed brighter today, as if her faint light was waking up bit by bit. When she opened her eyes, Bram gave her a gentle smile. "Morning, little star," he said, using the name he had given her in his mind. She looked at him, then at the window where the rain fell in thin silver lines. Her eyes moved to the teacup, and Bram understood at once. "You'd like some too?" he asked. She nodded weakly. Bram felt a spark of hope. If she wanted tea, maybe she was stronger than he feared. He made her a cup with warm water and a drop of honey. She sipped slowly, her hands shaking. After a while, she leaned back on the pillow, eyes half closed but calm. Bram sat beside her again. He wanted to ask her so many things, but he was patient. He knew she needed time. Hours passed like soft rain on the roof. Bram told her little stories to keep her awake, about the time a wild goat ate all his cabbages, or how the hen named Dottie once laid an egg right on his bed. The girl listened, her lips curling into a small smile now and then. At last, she raised her hand and pointed to herself. She touched her chest and then touched Bram's hand. Her lips moved, trying to form a word. Bram leaned closer. Lyra, she whispered. The word was faint but clear. Lyra, Bram repeated, testing the sound. She nodded. So that was her name, Lyra. That's a beautiful name, Bram said softly. He felt warmth in his heart. She had given him her name like a small trust. Given back, he squeezed her hand gently. My name is Bram, as you know. Just Bram. Old Bram, some say. Lyra's eyes sparkled for a moment, as if she understood his little joke. Then her gaze turned serious. She pointed again, this time toward the roof, toward the sky. She pressed her hand to her chest, then drew a line across her throat. Her eyes filled with tears that did not fall. Bram frowned. He understood only part of it, but the meaning was heavy enough. She came from the sky, and she had run from something that wanted her gone. It's all right, Lyra, Bram said softly. He did not know how much she understood, but he hoped his voice carried his. Promise, you are safe here. No one will find you. But Lyra shook her head weakly. She pressed her hand to her heart again, then lifted her hand above her head as if holding a crown. Bram's eyes widened. A crown? She lowered her hand to her throat once more. You are a princess? Bram asked, the word feeling strange on his tongue. Lyra's eyes glowed faintly. She nodded once. She was telling them she was not just someone from the sky, she was royalty. Bram sat back, shocked. He looked at the thin girl wrapped in his old blankets, this tiny being who could barely lift a spoon. A princess, hunted, alone on a strange world. Lyra looked at him with pleading eyes. She tried to speak again, but her voice cracked. Bram shook his head gently and laid his warm hand on her cold fingers. No need to explain more now, child. Bram said softly, Save your strength, I know enough. He rose and fetched an old pencil and a piece of paper. He brought it to her and placed it in her lap. Lyra looked at it, puzzled, but then took the pencil weakly. Her fingers moved slowly, clumsy from exhaustion. She drew a circle like a world, then a star above it. She drew a small crown on top of the star. Bram watched, trying to understand. Lyra pointed to the drawing, then tapped her chest again. She drew tiny shapes around the circle, sharp shapes like knives or claws. She pointed at the shapes and then at herself with a fearful look. You were chased? Bram guessed. Enemies. They want to find you, Lyra nodded. Her eyes dropped and a single tear rolled down her silver cheek. She looked so young in that moment, not a princess, not an alien, but just a girl who had lost everything. Bram felt anger stir in his chest. He had not felt anger in a long time, but now it was there like an old stove suddenly roaring back to life. Whoever had done this to Lyra, he would not let them take her again. He folded the paper gently and put it in a drawer. No one will find you here, Bram said again, firmer this time. I will keep you safe. This house is old but strong. So am I. Lyra looked at him with wide, tired eyes. Then she did something that surprised Bram more than anything. She reached out her thin arms and wrapped them weakly around his hand. It was the smallest hug, but it warmed Bram's old bones more than any fire could. They sat like that for a while, an old man and an orphaned princess who had fallen from the stars. Outside, the rain stopped and the sky cleared to soft blue. But Bram knew storms would come again. He would have to be ready. He checked the locks on his doors and the old hunting rifle hidden under his bed. He made extra soup and hid more blankets in the cellar. He did not know what chased Lyra. He only knew they would come. And when they did, Bram would stand between them and this girl who now lay safe on his couch. He watched her drift into a calm sleep, the faint light under her skin pulsing like a quiet promise. Bram sat beside her, his hand resting on hers. Sleep. Well, little star, he whispered, your secrets are safe here. And so are you. For a few days, peace returned to Bram's small farm. Each morning, he found Lyra sitting by the window, wrapped in a warm blanket, her silver eyes watching the sunrise. Sometimes she drew small pictures, stars, planets, and strange shapes. Bram did not understand. Each drawing felt like a piece of her lost home. Bram tried to make her stronger. He cooked good soups with fresh vegetables and soft bread. He brought her warm milk with honey before bed. He made her laugh by telling old village stories about talking crows and cows that danced at night. Every small smile from Lyra made Bram's heart lighter. One evening, after supper, Bram sat by the fireplace mending his old coat. Lyra sat on the floor nearby with a blanket around her shoulders. She drew shapes on a piece of wood with a bit of charcoal. Now and then, she looked at Bram and then back at her drawing. Suddenly, Lyra paused. Her head turned to the window. Her eyes narrowed, and her soft light flickered brighter for a moment. Bram followed her gaze but saw only the dark shapes of trees swaying gently outside. What is it, little star? Bram asked kindly. Lyra did not answer. She pressed her finger to her lips, telling him to be quiet. She rose slowly and walked to the window. Bram's old floor creaked under her bare feet. She stood still, peering into the dark woods. Bram put down his coat and walked over to her. He looked outside too, but his old eyes saw nothing, just shadows and soft moonlight on the grass. There's nothing there, Lyra, Bram said in a low voice. Just wind and trees. But Lyra shook her head. She pointed into the darkness. Then she tapped her ear, telling him to listen. Bram held his breath. For a moment, he heard only the wind moving through the leaves. Then there it was, a crack. A branch breaking under a foot that did not belong to any animal. Bram's heart skipped. He knew the sound of quiet feet in the woods. He had hunted enough in his life to know when someone was moving carefully. He pulled Lyra back from the window. He drew the curtain shut with a quick tug. Lyra grabbed his sleeve, her eyes wide with fear. It's all right, Bram whispered. But he knew it was not all right. Someone was out there. Maybe more than one. He guided Lyra to the couch and covered her with blankets. He handed her the small lantern from the shelf and put his finger to his lips. She held the lantern closer, small hands trembling. Bram walked quietly to the kitchen. He lifted the old hunting rifle from behind the door. The metal felt cold in his hands, but familiar. He checked the bullet still there, ready. His hand shook a little, but he took a deep breath and calmed his old bones. He looked at Lyra and gave her a soft nod. Her silver eyes glowed faintly. In the dark room, like a hidden star. He pressed his finger to his lips again and stepped outside. The night was cold. Bram's breath rose in thin white clouds as he moved carefully across the yard. He kept to the shadows near the fence. The moonlight fell in patches, lighting the grass in the old garden. Bram listened. There another soft crack. Someone was near the chicken coop. Bram's heart beat faster, but he kept his hand steady. He raised the rifle, pointing it toward the sound. Who's there? Bram called in a low, firm voice. Show yourself. For a moment, the woods were silent again. Then, a dark shape stepped out from behind the coop. It was a man tall, wrapped in a long coat. Bram could not see his face, but he saw the faint shine of metal at the man's side. I don't want trouble. Bram said, This is my land. Go back the way you came. The man did not move. He lifted his hand slowly to show he held nothing. But Bram kept the rifle steady. He knew better than to trust empty hands. I'm just looking for someone, the man said. His voice was calm, too calm. "Did you see anything fall from the sky a few nights ago, old man?" Bram's mouth felt dry. He did not answer right away. He studied the man's shadowed face. There was something cold in the stranger's tone like metal under soft cloth. "I didn't see anything," Bram lied. "Only stars and rain. Now, leave my farm." The man stepped closer, boots crunching on the dry grass. "I think you did see something. We tracked it here. It's very important we find it, for everyone's safety." Bram's grip tightened on the rifle. He thought of Lyra, small and quiet inside the house. He thought of her eyes, so full of fear when she pointed to the woods. "There's nothing here for you," Bram said. His voice was hard now. "Turn around." The man tilted his head as if curious. "You're a good man, I see that. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Give us what we want, and you won't be harmed." Bram took a slow step back, keeping the rifle raised. "You should go," he said again. Behind the man, Bram noticed a flicker of movement, another shadow slipped between the trees. He counted 2, maybe 3 shapes in the darkness. His heart thumped harder. He was just one old man with an old rifle. Still, Bram stood his ground. He remembered Lyra's tiny hands holding his finger, her trust when she gave him her name. He would not fail her now. "Last warning," Bram said, his voice low as thunder. "Leave." The man's calm face changed then. The soft look turned sharp. He lowered his hands slowly, his eyes hard and empty. "Have it your way, old man," he said. He stepped back into the darkness, vanishing into the shadows like smoke. Bram listened. The woods went silent again, too silent. He stayed there, rifle ready, eyes scanning the trees. He knew they were still out there, watching, waiting. Maybe they would come tonight, or maybe tomorrow. But they would come after a long while. Bram stepped back inside. Lyra was sitting up on the couch, clutching the lantern to her chest. Her eyes were wide and shining. "They're looking for you," Bram said gently. He put the rifle down and knelt beside her. "But they'll have to get through me first." Lyra pressed her forehead to his and let out a soft, shaky breath. She was no longer alone in the dark. The sun set behind the hills, painting Bram's small farm in shades of orange and pink. Inside the wooden house, a quiet peace filled the rooms. Bram sat at the old wooden table, mending a torn blanket. He could hear Lyra's soft breathing. From the couch where she now rested more comfortably, Lyra had gained a little color in her cheeks. She ate soup each day and sipped warm tea. Her eyes stayed open longer now, and sometimes she even sat up to look out the window. To Bram, each small change was a victory dot as the sky darkened. Bram finished his work and walked over to Lyra. She was awake, staring at the ceiling with her glowing eyes. When Bram sat beside her, she turned her head and gave him a small smile. "Feeling better tonight?" Bram asked gently. Lyra nodded. Her voice was still too weak to speak much, but her eyes spoke for her. She pointed to the window. Outside, the stars were beginning to appear, one by one. Bram looked with her. He wondered which star had been her home. He wondered what it looked like, what her people were like, what stories they told under their night sky. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Bram said. "When I was a boy, I used to lie in the fields at night and count stars until I fell asleep. My wife used to laugh and say I would dream my way into space one day." Lyra looked at him with soft eyes, as if she could almost see that young boy in him. Bram leaned closer. "Do you miss it? Your home?" Lyra's eyes glistened. She nodded. Slowly, her fingers tracing a small circle in the air. Bram reached out and squeezed her hand gently. "Don't worry, little star. You have a home here now, too. For as long as you need." Lyra's fingers closed around his hand, holding on like a child afraid of the dark. Bram stayed there until her eyelids grew heavy. She drifted into sleep, her small hand still wrapped around his finger. That night, Bram could not sleep. He lay, in his bed, but his mind was busy. He thought about the men in the village who might come asking questions. He thought about Joss and his curious eyes. He thought about the strange lights in the sky that people whispered about at the market. Most of all, he thought about what would happen if someone dangerous found Lyra. He rose from his bed, careful not to wake the old floorboards too much. He put on his coat and stepped outside into the cool night. The stars above were bright, clear, and endless. Somewhere up there was the place Lyra called home, a place she could not return to now. Bram walked to his small shed beside the house. Inside, the smell of old oil and dry wood filled the air. He pulled out his old hunting rifle, the one he had not used in many years. He checked it carefully, making sure it was clean. He found a box of bullets tucked away in a dusty tin. He did not want trouble. He did not want to hurt anyone. But Bram knew that if anyone came for Lyra, he would stand between them and this small, lost girl. He owed her that much. Maybe he owed it to himself too, to protect something good one last time. He hid the rifle behind the kitchen door when he went back inside. He looked at Lyra, still sleeping under her warm blankets. The glow under her skin pulsed gently in the darkness like a small night light. Bram sat in his chair beside her and dozed off, the fire crackling quietly behind him. The next morning, Bram woke to the smell of tea. He blinked his tired eyes and saw Lyra sitting up, her thin hands wrapped around a warm cup. She looked at him shyly, her silver eyes brighter than before. "You made tea?" Bram asked, surprised. Lyra nodded. She had somehow gotten up and reached the old kettle by herself. Bram smiled wide, a real deep smile he had not felt in years. "Well done, little star," he said proudly. "You're stronger than you look." Lyra held out the cup to him, offering him the first sip. Bram laughed softly and took a careful drink. It was too watery, but it tasted sweet because she had made it. After breakfast, Bram helped Lyra to the window. He set up a small chair with blankets so she could look outside. She sat there, watching the birds hop around the yard and the chickens peck at the grass. While she sat, Bram worked in the garden, digging up carrots and potatoes. He looked back often to see Lyra watching him with curious eyes. Sometimes she waved at the birds, and they fluttered closer as if they knew she meant no harm. By noon, Bram brought her a small piece of bread with honey. She ate slowly, careful not to spill. When she was done, she pointed at the paper and pencil Bram had left for her. He gave them to her with a smile. Lyra began to draw. This time, her hand was steadier. She drew stars, many stars, and in the middle, a large circle with lines that looked like rivers or roads. Bram watched her work in silence, wondering what she would show him. When she finished, she turned the paper to Bram. Her eyes were serious. She tapped the circle and pointed to the sky, then pointed at herself. "You're home?" Bram asked softly. She nodded. Then she tapped the stars around the circle and drew little arrows pointing inward. She tapped her chest, then drew an X over the circle. Bram frowned. "They chased you away? They destroyed your home?" Lyra lowered her head. A tear fell on the paper, smudging the pencil lines. Bram felt his heart ache. He reached out and wiped her cheek gently. "No more running," he promised. "No one will hurt you here." Lyra looked at him, her eyes shining bright with trust. She did not have many words yet, but Bram knew they did not need them. They had a promise, and that was enough. Outside, the wind blew soft through the trees. Inside, an old man and a lost princess sat together by the window, guarding a tiny light that no storm would ever take away. The next morning, Bram woke before the first bird sang. He sat on the edge of his bed and listened to the soft breathing from the other room. Lyra still slept on the old couch, wrapped in his thickest blankets. Her small chest rose and fell, and her silver hair glowed faintly in the weak dawn light. Bram rubbed his eyes. He felt the ache in his old bones, the same pain he always carried. but he pushed it aside. Today, he needed to be strong for her. He made tea and warm porridge again. When Lyra woke, she ate quietly, her eyes on him the whole time. It was like she could sense what he was thinking before he spoke. When they finished, Bram laid out the map on the table once more. He pointed to the deep forest, far beyond the river and the hills. He marked a small dot, an old hunting cabin no one but him knew about. There, Bram said. We go there tonight. It's hidden, safe, and has food and blankets. They won't find us easily. Lyra studied the map, then looked up at Bram. She nodded slowly. Her eyes were calm now, but he could still see the worry behind them. Bram packed quietly. He placed dry food in one bag: bread, cheese, nuts, and dried berries. He added a water flask, an old blanket, and his best knife. The rifle stayed by the door outside. The day was cold and gray. The wind carried the smell of rain. Bram knew they would need to leave before dark, but not too early if the men were watching. They could not make it easy for them to follow. All day, Bram and Lyra stayed inside. Bram told her stories to keep her calm. He spoke of his young days in the woods, the first time he built a cabin by hand, the long winters when snow covered the farm, and he survived with only the warmth of a fire and his own hope. Lyra listened with quiet eyes. Sometimes she touched his arm gently, like she was saying thank you without words. As the sun began to fall behind the trees, Bram stood and checked the rifle one last time. He helped Lyra into the old coat that was still too big for her. He placed the small bag on her back and lifted his own heavier pack onto his shoulders. He turned off every lantern, covered the windows, and opened the back door slowly. Cool wind brushed his face. He listened, nothing but the soft rustle of leaves and a distant owl. He held out his hand. Lyra took it without fear. Together, they stepped into the darkening woods. They moved slowly at first, careful not to break branches or step on dry leaves. Bram led the way, his old boots silent on the forest floor. Lyra followed close behind, her small steps light as a whisper. They crossed the old fence line and followed the narrow path Bram had walked many times alone. But tonight, it felt different. He was not alone. He carried not just a pack but a promise. I will keep her safe. As night fell, the forest came alive with sounds: crickets singing, the flap of wings, the soft splash of water when they crossed a shallow stream. Lyra squeezed Bram's hand tighter when the wind howled through the tall trees. He squeezed back, letting her know he was there. After an hour, they reached the old river. Bram stopped and listened. He heard it then, a faint crack in the woods. Behind them, a branch breaking. Voices low but growing closer. They're following, Bram whispered. Lyra's eyes widened. She looked at the dark water and then back at Bram. He knew what she was thinking. We must hurry. He picked her up gently and stepped into the cold river. The water rose to his knees, then to his thighs, soaking his old pants and boots. Lyra clung to his shoulders, her breath warm on his neck. They crossed to the other side, water splashing softly. Bram found the hidden path he remembered from his youth, a deer trail that twisted and turned. Leaving no clear tracks, they walked deeper into the trees. The voices behind them grew faint, then faded. The forest swallowed them like a secret dot. It was nearly midnight when they saw the small cabin. It stood under tall pines, half covered by moss and vines. The door was rough wood, the windows tiny and dusty. But to Bram, it looked like a castle. He pushed the door open. Inside, the air smelled old but dry. There was an old stone fireplace, a small bed, and a broken chair. Bram lowered Lyra onto the bed and set down their bags. He used dry twigs and bark to start a fire. Soon, warm orange light filled the dark cabin. Lyra sat close, holding her hands over the flames. Her silver hair shimmered in the firelight. Bram sat across from her. His heart felt heavy and light at the same time. They were safe for now, but For how long? He looked at Lyra. Little star, he said softly. I don't know what comes next, but I know one thing. You're not alone anymore. I will protect you, no matter what. Lyra reached out and touched his chest, just over his heart. She closed her eyes, and for a moment, the faint light inside her glowed brighter. It shone through her fingers, warm and gentle. Bram felt something then like a small spark inside him, a light in his old heart that pushed away the darkness and fear. He smiled, tears filling his eyes. You are home now, he whispered outside. The wind howled through the trees. The strangers would search and search, but they would not find her tonight. Not while Bram still breathed. Inside the hidden cabin, an old man and a lost princess sat together by the fire. The world was wide and dangerous, but in this small, warm place, hope lived, and hope was enough. After the men disappeared back into the dark woods, Bram could not sleep. He stayed near the door, the old rifle close by his chair. Every sound outside made his ears stand up, branches tapping the wall, the wind pushing against the windows. The soft hoot of an owl far away. Inside the warm house, Lyra lay curled up on the couch, wrapped in blankets. She did not sleep well either. Her small body shivered sometimes, even though Bram kept the fire going all night. Once or twice, she woke and looked around the room with wide eyes, as if she expected someone to come through the door. Each time, Bram sat beside her until she drifted off again. When dawn broke, Bram made tea and porridge. He watched Lyra eat. Slowly, her hands trembling. She was stronger now than when he first found her, but still so thin and breakable. He hated the thought of someone trying to take her away. After breakfast, Bram pulled out his old wooden chest. He had not opened it in years. Inside were maps, old coins, a compass, and a small box of letters tied with a string. Lyra sat next to him, her curious eyes watching every small thing he took out. Bram unrolled one map on the table. It showed the thick forest behind his farm, the river that curved like a silver snake, and the hills where wild berries grew. He pointed to the forest and then at Lyra. If they come back, we can hide in here, he said softly. There are old hunting cabins deep in the woods. They won't find us easily. Lyra leaned closer to study the map. She traced the river with her finger and then looked at Bram, nodding once. She seemed to understand. Her trust made Bram's old heart ache with both worry and warmth. For the rest of the morning, Bram packed a small bag. He put in dry bread, cheese, a few apples, and a blanket. He checked his rifle again and made sure he had enough bullets. He hid the bag near the back door, just in case they needed to run quickly. When he turned around, he found Lyra folding a second blanket. She placed it next to the bag and gave Bram a shy smile. Even without words, she was saying, I am ready. That afternoon, Bram sat Lyra down at the table and handed her paper and pencil again. Can you show me more? He asked gently. About your home, about those men. Lyra looked at the pencil for a moment, then began to draw. Her lines were quick and smooth. She drew her round planet again, then small shapes that looked like ships, sharp and pointed like knives. She made dark marks around her planet explosions, perhaps. Then she drew stick figures, her own kind, standing under a sky full of fire. Bram watched in silence. Lyra's eyes filled with tears as she worked. She drew herself last, a tiny figure with big eyes and a small crown over her head. She circled herself and drew an arrow pointing away from the burning planet. You're a princess, Bram whispered. The word felt strange on his tongue but right in his heart. They chased you away, Lyra nodded. She tapped the ships with her pencil and then pointed to the window toward the woods where the strangers had come from. She spread her hands wide and pressed them together, showing Bram that the men in the ships were the same. Bram leaned back, his mind racing. So the men in the woods were hunters. Not the kind that chased deer, but the kind that chased people like Lyra. He wished he knew more about the stars, about other worlds. But he was just an old man with a small farm and an old rifle. Still, he could see that Lyra had nowhere else to go. She trusted him. That was enough. Bram put his hand on Lyra's shoulder. She leaned into his touch like a small bird finding warmth. "You're safe here," Bram said again. "I promise." "You." As the sun began to set, Bram decided to teach Lyra something new. He took her outside for the first time since he found her. She wore an old coat of his that dragged at her ankles, and her eyes widened at the feel of the soft evening wind. They walked to the chicken coop. The hens clucked and pecked at the ground. Lyra watched them with wonder, giggling softly when one bold hen tried to peck at her coat. Bram showed her how to scatter feed, and Lyra laughed when the chickens rushed to her feet. Bram looked at her, standing there in the fading light, her silver eyes bright and alive. For a moment, it felt like nothing bad could reach them here. The men in the woods were far away. The cold night was not so dark. When they went back inside, Lyra helped Bram light the lanterns. She moved slowly but with care, trying to copy everything. He did. When the house was warm and glowing, Bram sat her down with a soft piece of bread and honey. She ate while he mended an old bag. A soft knock at the door made Bram freeze. He looked at Lyra. Her eyes were wide again, but this time there was no fear, just surprise. Bram placed his finger to his lips and picked up the rifle. He stepped slowly to the door and called out, "Who is it?" A familiar voice answered. "It's me, Bram. It's Joss." Bram lowered the rifle and opened the door a crack. Joss stood there, shivering a little in the cold. He held a small bag of eggs in one hand. "Brought you these," Joss said. His eyes darted past Bram into the warm room. "You didn't come to the market today. Folks wondered if you were all right." Bram forced a small smile. "I'm fine, Joss, just busy." Joss peeked inside and saw Lyra sitting on the couch. His eyes widened. "Who's that? Didn't know you had family visiting." Bram's heart pounded. He stepped outside and closed the door behind him. "She's a friend. She needed help." Joss frowned. He looked at the woods and then back at Bram. "You know there are strangers in the forest, right? Folks say they're asking strange questions." "I know," Bram said firmly. "I'll handle it." Joss nodded slowly. He placed the bag of eggs in Bram's hands. "Be careful, old friend." Bram watched him walk away, the soft crunch of boots fading into the dark. He knew it was only a matter of time before the men came again, maybe. Not just at night, but bold enough to knock on his door. He stepped back inside and locked the door tight. Lyra looked at him, waiting for his face to tell her if it was safe. Bram smiled softly and sat beside her. He took her hand in his rough, warm grip. "Tomorrow we make a plan," he whispered. "We won't let them take you, little star. We'll find a way." Outside, the wind picked up. Inside, two hearts beat. As one, an old man and a lost princess, ready to face whatever waited in the dark.